Have you ever found yourself saying yes to a favor, even when you are just like completely exhausted?
Oh, absolutely. Like totally overwhelmed.
Right. Honestly, just plain tired. You know the exact feeling we're talking about here.
Yeah, everyone knows that feeling.
Your schedule is already packed, your energy reserves are entirely depleted, you are literally running on fumes.
Just completely empty.
And yet, the absolute second someone asks you for help, the word yes just slips right out of your mouth.
It's wild how fast it happens.
It happens before your conscious brain even has a chance to process the request. It's automatic.
Almost involuntary, really.
Yeah, exactly. And usually when this happens, society just looks at you and applauds.
They love it. They tell you that you are just being extremely helpful.
Right. They say you're a naturally kind person. You're the reliable one.
The glue that holds the family together.
Or the office together, or the friend group, you know.
Yeah.
But what if that automatic yes isn't actually about kindness at all?
That is the big question.
What if it's a completely different mechanism that's just, like, disguised as generosity?
It's a terrifying thought, but a necessary one.
Welcome to our deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack some really fascinating notes from brain logic.
Some really heavy stuff in there.
Yeah, very heavy. We're specifically exploring two interconnected pieces of this human puzzle, the psychology of the burdened helper and the utility of belonging.
Which essentially decodes the overgiver's fawn response.
Right. We're going to decode the hidden survival mechanisms operating behind that automatic yes.
And really help you understand exactly why your mind insists on helping everyone else but yourself.
Often at the absolute expense of your own well-being.
Yeah, it is such a crucial distinction to establish right out of the gate, I think.
Because we romanticize it so much.
Exactly. We heavily romanticize the overgiver in our culture.
We really do.
We look at someone who constantly sacrifices their own time, their own sleep, their own emotional bandwidth, and we literally label them a saint.
We put them on a pedestal for sure.
But when we start peeling back the layers, when we look at the actual neurobiology and psychology behind people who fundamentally struggle to say no to helping others, it's a completely different picture.
A much darker landscape, right?
Much darker. I mean, if you are listening to this and you feel a sudden surge of anxiety, a literal spike in your heart rate just thinking about saying no.
Or like a pit in your stomach.
Yeah, a shallowing of your breath or that pit in your stomach at the mere thought of turning someone down or setting a boundary, you need to understand something important.
What's that?
This is not a sign of weakness. It is definitely not a character flaw.
And it isn't just you being quote-unquote too nice.
No, not at all. What you are experiencing is a highly calculated, deeply learned neurological pattern.
Wow. A learned pattern.
Yes. In clinical psychology, we refer to this as a Fawn response.
Okay, the Fawn response.
Right. Your brain is effectively deploying this response as a rapid-fire strategy to ensure your social safety.
To maintain your connection to the group.
Exactly. To the group or just the individual standing right in front of you. It is a biological imperative.
So it's basically a survival tactic.
A survival tactic that is brilliantly masquerading as a personality trait.
I want to pause and really dig into this Fawn response, because I feel like this is where the popular misconception about kindness really starts to unravel.
It definitely is.
Because most people listening are probably deeply familiar with the classic survival responses, right?
The ones we hear about constantly in pop psychology.
Yeah, we all know fight, flight, or freeze.
Right, those are the big three.
But fawning is this lesser-known fourth option, and it operates with a completely different kind of camouflage.
It really does hide in plain sight.
Because we know what fight and flight look like physically, the adrenaline, the running, the aggression.
It's very obvious.
But how exactly does fawning operate on a neurological level as a survival mechanism? Yeah. Especially when the threat standing in front of you isn't a predator in the wild.
Right, it's just a coworker.
Yeah, it's just a coworker asking you to take on their weekend shift, or a partner sighing heavily in the kitchen.
Well, the mechanism relies entirely on how our brains interpret danger.
Okay.
Our nervous systems are incredibly sophisticated, but the primitive parts of our brain, specifically the amygdala...
Which is like our threat detection center, right?
Exactly. The amygdala hasn't really evolved to differentiate perfectly between a physical threat to our bodily survival and a social threat to our relational survival.
Oh, wow. So it treats them the same.
To the primitive brain, social rejection is basically equated with death.
That sounds extreme, but I guess evolutionarily it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Evolutionarily speaking, if you were cast out of the tribe, you did not survive. You starved or you were hunted.
Right. You couldn't make it alone.
So fast forward to the modern day. When your coworker asks you to take their shift, and you internally feel that you absolutely cannot do it because you are burning out.
Your brain still perceives a massive potential conflict.
A massive one. If you say no, they might be angry. They might think less of you.
They might withdraw their social connection or badmouth you to the rest of the office.
Right. And the Fawn response is your brain's brilliant, albeit entirely exhausting way of neutralizing that perceived threat before it can even materialize.
Before it even happens.
Yes. Instead of fighting the threat, fleeing from it, or freezing in terror, you appease it.
You merge with the other person's desires.
Exactly. You actively work to make them happy, comfortable, and satisfied.
Because your amygdala calculates a very simple equation.
A very simple one. A happy, comfortable person will not attack you, and they will not abandon you.
Wow. So appeasement becomes the safest route.
The safest, most efficient route for your nervous system to navigate the interaction. You neutralize the danger by becoming exactly what the other person needs you to be in that exact moment.
So it operates almost entirely bypassing the prefrontal cortex, like the logical reasoning part of the brain.
It completely bypasses it.
It makes me think of a physical reflex, but like an emotional one.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Like if someone accidentally knocks a glass of water off a kitchen counter, you don't stand there and consciously think, that glass is falling.
Wait, let me calculate its trajectory.
Yeah. Let me extend my arm to intercept it before it shatters. No, your hand just darts out automatically.
You don't even think about it.
Your nervous system reacts to prevent a mess before your conscious mind even registers the glass is falling.
Yes.
That's exactly what this automatic yes feels like for the burden helper, doesn't it?
It is exactly like that.
You aren't consciously deciding to be kind or generous in that split second. Your nervous system is just reacting to prevent an emotional or social mess.
To catch the falling glass.
You sense the tension in the room, you see the proverbial falling glass, and you just dive to catch it.
Completely, regardless of whether you end up cutting your own hands in the process.
That is so intense.
It is a highly accurate way to visualize it. The cognitive bypass is identical.
Because the conscious brain knows you're exhausted. Right. The part of you that knows you only slept 4 hours last night, the part that knows you have a massive to-do list at home waiting for you, that part is completely overridden by the amygdala.
The amygdala just takes the wheel.
It sees the potential for someone to be disappointed in you, registers that potential disappointment as an impending catastrophic mess, and fires off the instruction to appease immediately.
So the word yes comes out of your mouth before you can even consult your own internal energy levels.
Exactly. And what's truly insidious about this response is how perfectly it hides in plain sight.
Because it looks like you're just being a good person.
Because fawning looks so pro-social, it mirrors helpfulness and generosity so closely, it goes completely unchecked by society.
That makes so much sense. Because if someone is constantly in fight mode,
they get labeled as aggressive or hostile.
Right. And we usually stage an intervention. We tell them they need anger management.
And if someone is always fleeing or freezing, we notice their severe avoidance.
We try to get them help for their anxiety.
Not the fawn.
We reward them.
We praise them. We give them promotions and tell them they are the best friend anyone could ask for.
We effectively reinforce their trauma response by telling them how wonderful they are for constantly catching everyone else's falling glasses.
Completely ignoring the fact that they are bleeding out from the effort.
I can completely see how that societal reinforcement would lock someone into this cycle.
It's a very tight lock.
But this brings up a really thorny question. I mean, if I'm a listener who prides myself on being a helpful person, it feels deeply unsettling to realize that what I thought was empathy might actually just be my internal fire alarm going off.
It is very unsettling.
We can't possibly be saying that all kindness is just a trauma response in disguise, right?
No, absolutely not.
How does a person distinguish between a genuine, authentic desire to help someone and being held hostage by this automatic fawn response?
That is the critical question.
Where is the line between true generosity and calculated survival?
We absolutely have to draw that line because you're right. Genuine kindness is real and it is vital.
Okay.
The difference doesn't lie in the action itself. The difference lies entirely in the internal origin of the action.
The invisible why driving the behavior beneath the surface.
Exactly. Genuine kindness operates from a place of internal abundance.
Internal abundance.
It is a choice made freely with the prefrontal cortex fully online.
So you're actually thinking about it?
Yes. If you are operating from abundance, you hear a request, you check in with yourself internally, you realize you have the time, the energy, and the authentic desire to help, and you offer it.
Okay.
And crucially, and this is the real litmus test, if you check in with yourself and realize you do not have the capacity, you can say no without your internal world collapsing into a state of panic.
So you might feel a little bad, but you aren't terrified.
Exactly. You might feel a mild, completely normal twinge of regret that you can't assist, but you do not feel a spike of terror.
You don't spend the next 3 days agonizing over whether that person hates you.
Right. The fawn response, on the other hand, operates from a profound place of anxiety and self-preservation.
From scarcity.
Yes. You aren't giving because your cup is overflowing and you want to share. You are giving because you are terrified of what will happen to you if you don't.
Wow.
It's the difference between buying someone a gift because you saw something that genuinely reminded you of them and you wanted to bring them joy.
Versus buying them a gift because you are terrified, they are mad at you, and you need to preemptively buy back their affection.
Exactly. You need to secure your standing with them.
But the external action looks exactly the same.
The beautifully wrapped gift, the helping hand, yes. It looks exactly the same to the outside observer.
But the internal landscape is radically different.
One is a pure expression of freedom and connection. The other is essentially a hostage negotiation with your own nervous system.
A hostage negotiation with your own nervous system. That's a heavy phrase.
It's the reality for a lot of people.
It completely reframes the bone-deep exhaustion so many overgivers feel.
Because it's constant work.
If you are constantly, relentlessly negotiating for your social survival in every interaction, of course you're going to be chronically drained.
It's like running complex algorithms in the background of your brain 24/7.
So if this automatic yes is a learned reflex, a highly developed strategy that our brains constructed to keep us safe, we have to look backward, right?
We do. We have to look at where it started.
Where did we learn it? The framework we're exploring points directly to the environment of childhood.
Specifically introducing a heavily loaded clinical term.
Parentification. Let's unpack the origins here. What exactly is happening in a child's environment that forces their brain to adopt this massive cognitive burden?
Well, parentification is one of the most profound disruptions of the natural order of human development.
And its echoes last an entire lifetime, don't they?
They really do. See, in a healthy, securely attached dynamic, the adult is the anchor.
Right.
The adult manages the external environment, they regulate their own internal emotions, and they provide a stable, predictable container for the child.
And within that secure container, the child is free to explore.
To make mistakes, to be selfish, to have messy emotions.
To figure out who they are without the burden of consequence.
Exactly. But in a parentified dynamic, that entire relationship is violently inverted.
The child is expected to take on the responsibilities of the adult.
Yes, sometimes explicitly, but very often implicitly. They take on the psychological and emotional responsibilities.
Now, we often think of practical parentification, right? Where a child is literally cooking dinner, paying bills, and physically raising their younger siblings because the parent is absent.
Right, or incapacitated. But what we're talking about here is often much more insidious emotional parentification.
Emotional parentification. How does that look?
This happens when a child is expected to act as the emotional regulator for the adults around them.
So the child becomes the therapist.
The therapist, the confidant, the mediator, or the emotional shock absorber for the parent's anxieties, rages, or relationship problems.
Long before their own brain is cognitively or emotionally equipped to even understand those concepts.
Exactly.
It's terrifying to think about the pressure that puts on a developing brain. I'm picturing an analogy here.
Let's hear it.
It's like taking a bright, capable 7-year-old child, sitting them in the driver's seat of a massive speeding car on a highway, handing them the steering wheel, and telling them, okay, keep us on the road.
That is a terrifying visual, but very accurate.
Now, human beings are incredibly adaptable.
Yeah.
That child might figure out how to steer. They might learn to slide down and reach the pedals.
They might even manage to keep the car perfectly centered in the lane.
Yeah, and avoid hitting anything for miles.
Yeah.
But we have to look at the internal state of that child.
Because they're not driving, because they want to go for a fun, breezy joyride?
No. They are gripping that steering wheel with white knuckles because they are absolutely terrified of crashing and dying.
They are hypervigilant.
Staring at the road, sweating, entirely consumed by the crushing task of keeping everyone in the car alive because the adult in the passenger seat is asleep or panicked or just refusing to drive.
And that intense, terrifying life or death grip on the wheel, that's the exact muscular and emotional tension the burden helper carries with them into every single room they enter for the rest of their adult life.
That analogy perfectly captures the sheer terror of it, the inappropriate weight of the responsibility.
And the lifelong physiological impact. When a child is handed that steering wheel, their developing brain undergoes a massive permanent cognitive adaptation.
What does the brain realize in that moment?
It realizes something horrifying. The adult who is supposed to be keeping me safe is incapable of doing so.
Oh.
In fact, their emotional instability is the primary threat to my survival. If I don't manage their emotions, if I don't anticipate their anger or their deep sadness and proactively fix it before it boils over, we are all going to crash.
So, to survive, the child's brain systematizes a brand new, ironclad rule for existence.
Yes, systematically suppress your own needs.
Because if you are the 7-year-old driving the speeding car, you cannot afford to be hungry.
You cannot afford to be tired. You cannot afford to have a tantrum.
Or be playful. Or need to use the restroom.
Your feelings, your discomfort, and your natural childhood needs become entirely irrelevant in the face of the larger, overwhelming crisis of keeping the car on the road.
The brain learns, deeply and permanently at a cellular level, that personal feelings must always come last.
Because personal feelings are a dangerous distraction from the job of survival.
And when we look at the reality of that, we realize that for this child, being a fixer wasn't just a personality quirk they developed because they loved helping.
Not at all.
Fixing things became a strict, non-negotiable necessity for survival.
It is such a heavy, invisible burden. They turn into these miniature, hyper-attuned radar systems.
I'm imagining a 10-year-old who walks into the living room after school, takes one look at the way their mother is holding her jaw, reads the microscopic shift in the emotional weather, and immediately starts adjusting the thermostat.
The internal monologue is instantaneous.
Mom's jaw is tight. She looks stressed. I need to be perfectly quiet, hide my bad grade, and maybe go clean the kitchen right now so she doesn't explode and plunge the house into chaos.
Or, Dad is sad today. His energy is low. I need to go be extra cheerful, perform, tell jokes, and make him smile so the house feels safe again.
They are constantly, relentlessly reading the room, not out of empathy, but to ensure their own physical and emotional safety.
Yes, the constant radar scanning is exhausting. And if we pull back and connect this childhood environment to the adult burdened helper we were talking about earlier, you see how perfectly this early blueprint maps onto their adult behavior.
The tragedy of emotional parentification is that when that child physically grows up, they don't just put the steering wheel down.
They can't. The brain has hardwired this pattern as the only way to exist in relation to other human beings.
So 20 years later, they walk into their workplace, their romantic relationships, their friendships, with the exact same hypervigilance.
They are 35 years old, still scanning for emotional storms in their boss or their spouse.
And preemptively trying to fix them before they even hit.
The ultimate theft of parentification is that it robs the individual of the experience of just being.
Their entire existence, their entire identity, becomes defined by doing.
By managing, by mitigating, by smoothing things over, by helping.
Because their foundational neurological blueprint dictates that if they stop fixing, if they take their hands off the wheel even for a second, the environment will collapse and they will be destroyed in the wreckage.
Exactly.
Which takes us into a really profound realization about how this shapes the way the listener actually connects with people today.
It really dictates everything.
Because this childhood environment doesn't just dictate your actions at work or how you handle a favor. It fundamentally corrupts your adult attachment style.
It shapes your absolute deepest, darkest feels regarding romantic relationships and close friendships.
Because when you grow up feeling like you were never anyone's first choice or feeling like your own intrinsic needs were never ever a priority, it leads to a very specific, almost tragic adult strategy.
Overgiving to avoid replacement.
Let's explore this irreplaceable complex. What is the brain trying to achieve here?
Well, this is one of the most fascinating and heartbreaking mechanisms we see.
Okay.
When a child's needs are constantly superseded by the needs of the adults around them, the message encoded in the child's mind is brutal but clear. I am not inherently valuable.
Because the logic of a child is very straightforward.
Exactly. If I were valuable, the people in charge would be taking care of me. Since no one is taking care of me, since I am taking care of them, I must not be a priority.
I must not be special just for existing.
So, how does the brain solve this terrifying equation? How do you ensure you aren't discarded by the tribe when you feel inherently unprioritized and unlovable at your core?
You have to artificially inflate your value.
And you do that by becoming undeniably, overwhelmingly, practically useful.
You develop the irreplaceable complex.
The unconscious strategy is to give so much of your time, so much of your energy, and so much relentless, boundaryless understanding that the other person simply cannot afford to lose you.
You are trying to manually engineer a permanence and a security in the relationship that you never naturally felt growing up.
You are artificially inflating your value through sheer utility.
The math of this is so clear and so exhausting. The strategy demands that you give significantly more time, more energy, and more understanding than you ever receive back.
It is an intentional, calculated imbalance.
You are willingly operating at a massive relational deficit. I'm thinking about how this plays out in real life.
How so?
It's the person who stays late every single Friday to help their coworker finish a project, even though that coworker has never once offered to help them.
Oh, definitely.
It's the person doing all of the emotional labor in a romantic relationship, constantly forgiving behavior that absolutely shouldn't be forgiven.
Constantly twisting themselves into knots, trying to understand their partner's toxic perspective while entirely abandoning their own reality.
You are basically overpaying for the relationship every single day, just to guarantee they won't cancel the subscription to you.
Overpaying for the relationship is exactly the right economic metaphor. You are pouring capital into an empty well because your brain is trying to earn a place that feels permanent.
But what's really crucial here, and what requires a deeper look, is the specific flavor of fear driving this relentless overpayment.
Yes, it is not just a general, vague fear of being alone.
It is a highly specific, visceral terror of being quietly, efficiently swapped for someone else.
You don't just fear abandonment, you fear replacement.
I really want to hang on that distinction for a moment because it completely changes the lens on this behavior. The fear of being replaced versus the fear of being lonely.
It's a massive difference.
It feels like there's a massive psychological chasm between the two. Why does being replaced feel so much more dangerous, so much more activating to the nervous system than simply sitting alone in an empty house?
It is a profound difference in how the ego and the core identity process the event. Loneliness is a state of being. It is an absence of connection.
Right.
And while loneliness is undoubtedly painful and difficult, it doesn't necessarily carry an indictment of your intrinsic worth as a human being.
You can be alone simply because of circumstances.
You move to a new city, or you just haven't met your people yet. You can be lonely and still hold on to the belief that you are a good person.
But being replaced.
Replacement is an active, targeted verdict on your value. If you are swapped for someone else, it means the other person evaluated you, weighed your contributions, found you insufficient, and decided that another human being offered a better return on investment.
For the burdened helper, whose entire childhood taught them they weren't a priority. Replacement is the ultimate catastrophic confirmation of their deepest, darkest fear.
It is a universe whispering, I knew it. I knew I wasn't enough on my own.
When you are alone, you can still maintain the protective illusion that maybe you are valuable. But when you are replaced, the illusion shatters completely.
That is why the nervous system treats the threat of replacement not just as a sadness to be avoided, but as an existential annihilation.
That hits so hard. If someone just leaves because they aren't ready for a relationship, they leave. But if they leave you for someone who is more fun, less needy, or, God forbid, more helpful than you,
It absolutely destroys the entire foundation of how you measure your worth.
which leads us directly into the massive problem of how this person evaluates themselves. Because if you are constantly frantically working to avoid being replaced, you end up developing a totally skewed, entirely outward-facing metric for your own self-worth.
You lose the ability to value yourself from the inside out.
Precisely. If your emotions were ignored, mocked, or constantly compared to others when you were growing up, for instance, if you were told things like, why can't you just be quiet and easy like your sister?
Or, I don't have time for your tears right now. I have real adult problems to deal with.
Your brain forms a concrete, unshakable belief.
So,
You are not that important simply by virtue of existing.
your value is highly conditional. It is predicated entirely on what you can produce, what you can fix, or how little trouble you cause the people around you.
In psychological terms, we refer to this as developing an external locus of evaluation, right?
Yes. Instead of having an internal sense of worth or quiet, knowing that you matter just because you are a living, breathing human being, you completely export the job of evaluating your worth to the outside world.
You look at your boss, your partner, your friends, and you wait for them to grade you.
Your internal monologue becomes a daily report card. Did I do enough for them today? Was I useful enough today? Did I solve enough problems today to justify my existence on this planet?
It is the absolute ingrained belief that you aren't that important on your own. And the everyday tragedy of living with that belief is immense.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
I want the listener to really imagine the exhaustion of having to be useful just to feel valued. Imagine waking up every single day and feeling like your right to be loved, your right to belong to your family or your friend group resets to zero every single morning when you open your eyes.
You don't get to carry over any credit from yesterday.
You have to get out of bed and earn your keep all over again through utility. You become a human doing rather than a human being.
And when we apply this to the concept of boundaries, it becomes so clear why saying no feels impossible.
To a mind operating under an external locus of evaluation, saying no to a request isn't just setting a healthy boundary.
Saying no feels like you are actively taking a sledgehammer to the very connection you are working so hard to maintain.
Because if your worth equals your utility, saying no drops your utility to zero.
Which means your worth drops to zero, which means they have every right to leave you.
That is the exact mathematical equation running continuously in their subconscious.
Utility equals love. Refusal equals zero utility. Therefore, refusal equals abandonment.
Under that math, refusal is impossible. It is not an option.
They keep stepping in to solve problems. They keep answering emails at midnight. They keep absorbing their partner's bad moods, even when they're physically ill from exhaustion.
Just to feel that temporary hit of being needed.
Because being needed is the absolute closest approximation to being loved that their nervous system can recognize and process.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate, because I know listeners are having this exact thought right now.
Let's hear it.
Doesn't society practically demand this level of utility from us? We don't live in a vacuum. We live in a world that heavily rewards people for being relentlessly useful.
We absolutely do.
We promote the employee who sacrifices their weekend and takes on extra projects without complaining. We praise the partner who seamlessly handles all the household chores and child rearing so the other can focus on their career.
We elevate the friend who drops everything at 2 a.m. to come help you fix a flat tire.
Society reinforces this conditional value constantly. It's the bedrock of how we function. So how does the listener actually untangle this?
It's tough.
How do they separate a healthy, noble desire to contribute to their community and be a good person from this damaging, trauma-based, conditional love mindset? Where is the line between having a great work ethic and being trapped in an external locus of evaluation?
It is a phenomenal question, and you are hitting on a very uncomfortable truth. Our culture absolutely capitalizes on and weaponizes the burdened helper's trauma response.
Capitalism, frankly, loves a fawn response.
It loves an employee who is terrified to say no. It thrives on it.
Right.
But the line between healthy contribution and conditional love isn't found in the action. It's found in the concept of baseline worth.
Baseline worth, okay.
Healthy contribution sounds like this. I know deep down that I have inherent value simply because I am a human being. I have a baseline of worth that cannot be touched.
So you start full.
Yes. Because I feel secure in that foundational value, I have the capacity, the extra energy, and the desire to contribute my skills to my community, my job, and my relationships.
And if that person gets laid off from their job, or if they have to tell a friend they can't help them move this weekend, they might feel disappointed, they might feel sad, but their core identity does not shatter.
They don't spiral into an existential crisis thinking they are garbage.
Right, they're still fundamentally whole.
Exactly. The burden helper, however, has absolutely no baseline worth. The floor doesn't exist for them.
Their entire identity is suspended midair by the fragile threads of their current utility.
If they stop producing, if they stop fixing, if they take a sick day, they don't just feel disappointed. They plummet into the abyss of feeling utterly worthless and unlovable.
So the way you separate the two is by asking yourself a deeply uncomfortable, terrifying question.
If I could do absolutely nothing for this person, if I lost my job, my money, my ability to drive them to the airport, my capacity to sit for 3 hours and listen to them vent about their problems, would they still want me in their life?
Wow.
And more importantly, would I still believe I deserve to be in their life?
If the answer is no, you are operating entirely from conditional value.
You are.
If I provided zero utility, would I still matter? That is a staggering thought experiment to sit with.
And because the burden helper secretly fears that the answer to that question is no, they double down.
They become even more useful. And this leads us to a really dark paradox.
Which one?
If your entire worth is based on being useful and solving problems, then having your own needs, your own problems, or your own exhaustion makes you the exact opposite of useful.
It makes you a liability.
It makes you a threat to your own relationships. Let's look at how this manifests into extreme rejection sensitivity and the absolute terror of being a burden.
This is the natural, inevitable progression of the utility mindset.
Right.
If you believe you only exist to serve others and solve their problems, you cannot simultaneously have problems of your own that require solving.
That would reverse the flow of energy that you rely on to keep yourself safe.
If you need help, you aren't providing utility, you are consuming it.
So you develop an extreme, debilitating form of rejection sensitivity.
You become hypervigilant to any microscopic sign that you are annoying someone, inconveniencing them, or asking for too much space.
Your brain convinces you that the exact moment you become a burden, the moment you require effort to maintain, you will be rejected or left behind.
So the behavioral adaptation is to shrink yourself into nothingness.
You hide your needs. You say, it's fine, I can handle it, even when you are actively drowning in stress.
You swallow your resentment when your partner ignores you. You ignore your own physical exhaustion, and you strive to be the most low-maintenance human being on the planet.
The heartbreaking irony here is that by doing this, by shrinking yourself down to be as easy and accommodating as possible, you do become easier to keep around.
But in the process, you become incredibly easy to overlook entirely.
By trying to be the easiest, lowest maintenance person in the room, just to guarantee that people won't abandon you, you essentially erase your authentic self from the relationship.
You become a ghost in your own life.
You are so adaptable, so undemanding, that the people around you genuinely forget you are a separate entity with your own rich internal life and your own breaking point.
You literally become the furniture in the room.
The furniture, that is so apt.
You are comfortable, you are reliable, you are always exactly where they expect you to be, ready to support them, but you are rarely noticed, and you are almost never actively tended to or polished.
And the reason the burden helper chooses this path of self-erasure isn't because they enjoy being ignored.
It is, again, deeply tied to the nervous system's inability to handle conflict.
The brain chooses to prioritize the comfort of others because sitting with unresolved tension feels physically dangerous.
Let's really look at what that means in a real-world scenario. Let's say you muster the courage to express a need.
Okay.
You tell your partner, I am drowning. I need you to step up and handle the kids' bedtime routine this week.
By stating that need, you introduce tension into the relationship.
Your partner might sigh, they might look slightly annoyed, they might push back and say they had a hard day too.
For a person with a secure attachment style, that tension is uncomfortable, but it is manageable.
They can sit with the disagreement, hold their ground, and wait until it's resolved through conversation.
But for the burdened helper, that sigh is apocalyptic.
Exactly. For the burdened helper, that heavy sigh, that fleeting look of momentary annoyance from their partner, registers as a 5-alarm fire in the amygdala.
It doesn't feel like a normal marital disagreement.
It feels like the immediate precursor to abandonment.
The tension is literally physically intolerable to their nervous system. Their heart races, their chest tightens, their throat closes up.
So to stop the physical panic happening in their own body, to put out the fire, they immediately backtrack.
Never mind, it's fine, I know you're tired, I'll just do it.
They prioritize the other person's comfort, not out of some noble selfless sacrifice, but as a desperate, rapid bid to regulate their own terrified nervous system and return the environment to a baseline of safety.
It's unsettling to realize that what I thought was empathy or compromise is actually just me trying to turn off my own internal fire alarm.
It changes everything.
Which perfectly bridges us into the physical reality of all this. We are talking about physical reactions now. Tight chests, racing hearts.
This isn't just a mental exercise or a philosophical approach to living. It is a grueling physiological reality.
Let's talk about the literal physical toll of being the helper, specifically focusing on the phenomenon of emotional contagion. What exactly is happening inside the listener's body when they are constantly in this hypervigilant environment?
Emotional contagion is a fascinating, heavily researched physiological phenomenon. As social mammals, we are all wired to mirror the emotions of those around us to some extent.
It involves our mirror neuron system, and it is the basis of empathy and social cohesion.
When someone smiles, we tend to smile.
But highly aware people, particularly those who grew up hypervigilant in parentified environments, experience emotional contagion on a vastly magnified, often debilitating scale.
Because their boundaries are so porous, they don't just notice when others around them are stressed or upset.
They literally absorb that tension into their own bodies as if it originated there.
It's like being a highly absorbent sponge, but the mechanism is involuntary.
Imagine walking into a kitchen where there is a massive sticky spill all over the counter. You don't grab a towel and frantically wipe it up because you have a deep, passionate love for cleaning.
Or because you want to be the hero of the kitchen.
You wipe it up because the sheer visual chaos of the spill is physically intolerable to your brain.
You literally cannot relax. You cannot sit down and breathe deeply until that counter is clean. Your nervous system demands order.
That is the exact mechanism. The physical sensation of absorbing that emotional noise is incredibly taxing on the body.
If the burdened helper is sitting in a room with a friend who is silently seething with anger, or a coworker who is vibrating with high-level anxiety, the helper's body unconsciously begins to mimic those exact physiological states.
Their own cortisol levels rise. Their muscles tense in sympathy. Their breathing becomes shallow.
Their body reacts as if the friend's anger or the coworker's anxiety is their own immediate problem to solve.
And this leads to one of the most profound paradigm shifts we can offer the burdened helper.
Saying yes to helping isn't always about being nice.
Very often, it is a desperate, almost selfishly motivated attempt to stop the emotional noise in the room so the helper's own mind can finally feel calm again.
Okay, I want to spend some time digesting this because this is a massive disruption to how we view ourselves.
Helping to stop the noise. You are saying that when someone vents to me for 3 solid hours about their toxic relationship, and I sit there and actively listen and offer advice.
Or when you jump in to fix your sister's self-inflicted financial crisis for the 4th time this year.
I'm not doing it solely because I'm a good, generous, patient sibling. I'm doing it because her chaos, her crisis, is making me physically, bodily uncomfortable.
Her anxiety is flooding your system.
And the only way I know how to turn off the alarm bells ringing in my own body is to eliminate the source of her distress. I am fixing her to soothe me.
Precisely. You have perfectly articulated the core dynamic. You are utilizing external control to achieve internal regulation.
Because I was never taught how to self-soothe in the presence of someone else's distress.
Because you were parentified and taught that their distress was entirely your responsibility to manage, you have no psychological barrier. Their anxiety bleeds directly into your nervous system.
I cannot tolerate them being upset, because if they are upset, I'm unsafe.
So the yes is a survival tactic. Yes, I will do your project for you. Yes, I will loan you the money. Yes, I will listen to you complain for the 100th time.
By solving their problem, by soothing their anger, you extinguish the fire that is actively burning you.
It is an incredibly effective, lightning-fast, short-term strategy for finding peace in the moment, but the long-term physical toll is devastating.
You are constantly running on the toxic fumes of everyone else's emotional exhaust, and your adrenal system is paying the price.
And if a person spends their entire adult life operating like this, absorbing everyone else's noise, constantly fixing massive problems just to soothe their own nervous system,
Shrinking themselves to hide their own needs, and furiously working to ensure they are irreplaceable through sheer, relentless utility.
what happens when the inevitable occurs?
What happens when the human sponge is completely saturated, they hit absolute burnout, and they actually genuinely need help themselves?
Let's talk about the absolute paradox of the burdened helper, the foreign concept of care, and the profound, crushing guilt of receiving support.
This is perhaps the most painful paradox of the entire burdened helper profile. They spend their entire life longing to be seen.
They daydream about someone finally noticing their exhaustion, stepping in and saying, "Sit down, let me handle this for you."
They crave it. But when it actually happens, when someone finally breaches their defenses and offers them genuine, strings-free care or support, they instinctively reject it.
Or, if they allow it, they endure the experience with an intense, agonizing sense of guilt and discomfort.
The psychological reality is that when you have been the reliable one, the pillar of strength for decades, the act of receiving care feels deeply foreign and actively physically uncomfortable.
It's so true, and it manifests in such bizarre ways. You might actually find yourself profusely apologizing for wanting help.
You apologize. I'm so sorry to bother you with this, or you really don't have to do this. I can totally manage. It's fine.
You are on your deathbed with the flu, someone brings you soup, and you feel like you are imposing on them.
You feel like you are becoming a massive burden the precise second you step out of the giver role and into the receiver role. Why does this happen?
Why does getting the exact thing the overgiver so desperately craves support, rest, and genuine care actually trigger a massive wave of guilt and feel like a direct threat to their identity?
It feels like a threat because, to their deeply conditioned nervous system, it is a threat.
We have to trace this all the way back to the foundational roots we discussed earlier.
If your entire identity, your entire strategy for staying safe, relevant, and connected in the world is built on the ironclad premise that I am the one who provides utility, I am the one who asks for nothing, then needing help violently violates your core survival rule.
When someone offers you care, it doesn't just feel nice, it triggers a deep cellular memory.
It takes your amygdala right back to the time when you were small, when you had to be your own primary guardian because no one else was capable.
Or worse, when asking for help resulted in you being shamed, yelled at, or ignored.
It's like the entire neurological system just short circuits. It doesn't know how to process the input of being cared for.
Exactly. When you are the one receiving care, you are suddenly no longer in control of the emotional environment.
You are vulnerable.
You are dependent on someone else's goodwill. And for the parentified child still living inside the adult, dependency is synonymous with mortal danger.
The intense guilt they feel in that moment isn't rational. It's a physiological alarm bell.
The guilt is the primitive brain screaming, "What are you doing? You are being useless." If you are useless, they will realize they don't actually need you and they will replace you. Stop receiving, get up immediately, and start fixing something.
The guilt is an evolutionary mechanism trying to force them back into the safety of their fawn response.
Receiving care requires a level of raw vulnerability that their nervous system has spent decades and enormous amounts of energy fortifying against.
That is incredibly illuminating. The guilt isn't an indicator that you are doing something wrong by resting. The guilt is literally just the friction of an old, outdated survival mechanism trying to reassert control over your body.
So we've spent this entire deep dive laying bare the heavy, intricate, deeply embedded psychological machinery that is running in the background of the listener's life.
We've gone from the illusion of the automatic yes, through the childhood roots of parentification, into the creation of the irreplaceable complex and the tragedy of conditional value.
We've explored the terror of being a burden, the physical exhaustion of emotional contagion, and the paradox of feeling guilty for receiving care.
This is a massive, weighty, frankly exhausting realization. How do they actually move forward? Because you can't just unknow this.
How do we unlearn these patterns and reclaim some semblance of peace?
That is the crucial pivot, and it is where the hope lies.
Everything we have discussed today, the fawning, the overgiving, the hypervigilance, the guilt, none of it is a permanent genetic trait.
It is not fundamentally who you are. It is a highly learned set of behaviors.
And the absolute fundamental rule of neuroplasticity is that whatever has been learned can be unlearned. The brain is incredibly adaptable.
It built these complex survival mechanisms because, at one specific point in your life, you absolutely needed them. They kept you safe when you were a child, navigating a chaotic, unpredictable environment.
They were brilliant adaptations then. But you are no longer that powerless child, and you are no longer trapped in that environment.
You have the adult power to transition from an automatic, anxiety-driven helper to an intentional, boundaried helper.
But practically speaking, how? I'm thinking of the listener whose nervous system is literally screaming at them right now, just thinking about saying no to a demanding boss tomorrow.
The idea of rewiring your brain sounds great in theory, but when the adrenaline hits, it feels impossible.
How do they take that very first terrifying step without instantly judging themselves or spiraling into a guilt trip that makes them cave?
The first step is exactly what we are doing in this very moment, bringing the deeply unconscious into the conscious light.
You have to start by neutrally observing your own automatic responses, almost like a scientist studying a subject.
We need to leverage neuroplasticity. The way you weaken an old neural pathway and build a new one is through interruption.
So the next time someone asks you for a favor and you feel that immediate desperate urge to say yes, I want you to just pause.
You do not even have to say no yet. Saying no is too big of a leap right now. Just introduce a micro pause.
Say, let me check my schedule and get back to you in an hour.
In that hour, in that wedge of time you've created, you ask yourself the hard questions.
Am I answering this from a place of abundance, or am I answering from a place of anxiety? Am I doing this because I want to, or am I afraid of being replaced? Am I trying to soothe my own emotional contagion because they seem stressed?
You essentially insert a wedge between the stimulus and the response. You give the prefrontal cortex time to catch up to the amygdala.
Yes. You deliberately interrupt the reflex. And as you begin to understand the actual why behind the panic, oh, my chest is tight because I'm terrified my boss will be mad at me, not because I actually want to work on a Saturday, you can start offering yourself deep compassion instead of judgment.
You stop judging yourself for being a pushover and start acknowledging, my brain is just trying to keep me safe using an old, outdated map.
When you stop fighting the guilt and start understanding it as a biological misfire, it begins to lose its paralyzing grip on you.
From there, you can start making very small, intentional choices to prioritize your peace.
You allow yourself to sit with the deeply uncomfortable tension of holding a small boundary, proving to your nervous system over and over again that you can say no and the world will not actually end.
You survive the tension, and the brain slowly learns a new baseline of safety.
My brain is just trying to keep me safe using an old map. That completely changes the relationship you have with your own anxiety.
So let's briefly trace this immense journey we've been on. We started by completely shattering the illusion of the automatic yes, recognizing it not as pure, unadulterated kindness, but as a complex fawn response designed entirely for social survival.
We trace those roots back to emotional parentification, where the freedom of childhood was swapped for the crushing, inappropriate responsibility of managing adult emotions.
We explored how this forces the developing brain to artificially inflate its value, overgiving to avoid the ultimate devastating fear of being quietly replaced.
We unpack the everyday tragedy of an external locus of evaluation, where your right to exist becomes entirely conditional on your utility.
We looked at how this leads to severe rejection sensitivity, causing you to shrink your needs until you become a ghost in your own relationships.
We felt the profound physical weight of emotional contagion, absorbing the chaos of every room just to find internal quiet.
And we navigated the incredibly foreign, short-circuiting territory of finally receiving care.
But most importantly, we established the science. You hold the power to unlearn all of this. You are allowed to take your hands off the steering wheel.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, lingering concept to explore on your own. It builds on everything we've discussed regarding conditional value and utility.
We've talked extensively about how your brain uses your extreme usefulness to secure connection and stave off abandonment.
But here is something for you to seriously mull over in the coming days as you move through the world.
If you finally give yourself permission to unlearn these ingrained patterns, if you start establishing boundaries, and if you genuinely stop overgiving, what happens to the relationships in your life that were entirely built on your utility?
As you begin to prioritize your peace and stop acting as the universal emotional shock absorber for everyone around you, you may face a very profound, very sobering realization.
As your utility drops, you will discover exactly who is willing to adapt to the new boundary you, and who was only ever in your life for what you could do for them.
It is a daunting, sometimes painful realization, but it is the absolute, unavoidable threshold to genuine freedom.
So tomorrow, when the tension spikes in the room, when the metaphorical glass starts to fall, and you feel that overwhelming biological urge to dive and catch it before it hits the ground.
Remember this.
Yeah.
Sometimes, the healthiest, most radical thing you can do for yourself is just let the glass break.
Stand there, let it shatter, sweep up the mess later, and finally give yourself permission to rest.
You are inherently valuable, with or without your utility. Prioritize your peace. It is absolutely worth the effort. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves.